Welcome to Master Gardening. I'm your host, Bud Qualk, and today we're at the University of Kentucky's McCracken County Extension Office. We're here with the Master Gardeners, and they're putting on one of their toolbox garden programs: lawn management, renovation, and revitalization. Have you noticed one of your neighbors has a yard that really looks good all the time? Would you like yours to look like that? Well, stay tuned. We'll be right back. Lawn care management. That's what we're going to talk about tonight, but we're also going to talk about renovation and revitalization. I'm using those two words. There's all kind of words you could use, but anytime I use renovation, that means we're going to take the yard all the way down to nothing and start from scratch. If anything to do with revitalization, we're not going to do that. We're going to try to revitalize a lawn that's not too bad. It's got some good grass in it maybe. It's got a chance to recover without taking it all the way down. First things first, planting. Oh my gosh, for planting. First, before anything, you want to do some planting. First of all, I'm going to suggest you do a soil test, and I'll get to that in just a minute. What kind of seed do you want? Sally, you've got a lot of Bermuda. Bermuda's this is Zone 7, by the way, in western Kentucky. If you're living in Florida or any of the places down south, Bermuda and Zoysia. Zoysia grows a little upright. Bermuda likes to grow out into your beds and stuff. They turn brown in the fall. A lot of people don't care about that. But one of the big things is it likes the hot, dry weather. It doesn't care if you water it. It doesn't care if you put any fertilizer on it. It's going to do fine, okay? If you've got some of each, that's when you've got a problem. So you got some fescue and you got some Bermuda. This is Zone 7 in the Midwest, and here, Bermuda and Zoysia don't do good in shade. So if you got a lot of shade, those are two that you probably don't want to use. In my yard that I'm working on, I've got a lot of shade. So I'm not going to try to sow any of those. I'm going to go for the fescue, tall fescue and blends. Okay, they've got a lot of fescues were terrible for years and years and years. They clumped and did all this stuff. But now tall fescue and the blends are really do well. 2, 3, 4, even 5 different blends in your seeds. Got this at the nursery. And nowhere on here does it say certified, and it won't. But if it's certified, it'll have a tag about this big sewn onto the top. And it'll have some words and stuff on there, and it'll certify that what it says on here is correct. And why do you want certified seed, the other option? Because 50% of it might be what you want, and 50% might be dirt or weed seeds or all kind of other stuff. Not always, but it could be. So if you want to get, it doesn't cost any extra, get the certified, and then you know what you got. What part of your lawn do you want to do it to? You want to revitalize it or you want to renovate it? I'm doing a little bit of each right now. I'm doing a renovation on a big yard that had no grass whatsoever. All weeds, big. In the summertime, it turned green. I had a lot of people walking by saying, "Hey, your yard looks great." There's not a blade of grass in that yard. There's not. Well, there's a little bit of Bermuda right in the front where a little bit of sun gets in. Okay, so you want to decide what you want to do with your which lawns. I've got 5 different ones. 3 of them are really small, but I'm going to take each one at a time. You want to measure the dimensions. You're going to use this from now on to put different kind of fertilizers and things like that on. And when you go to get your soil test, which I strongly suggest, they're going to want to know the dimensions of your yard. Width times length, square feet. And almost everything you do is per 1,000 square feet. So if you got 700 square feet, just go ahead and go by the 1,000, and same thing, 1,800 at 2,000, do twice. Okay, and I mentioned a minute ago about soil test. Why do you want to do a soil test? Well, first of all, where we live, it's free. If you live in the county where the extension office is, it's free. I don't know if all the states are doing that, but the University of Kentucky is doing that. If it's not free, it's only $7 or $8, and it's going to save you a lot of embarrassment down the road. It'll go ahead and give you everything you need to know to up your grade of your lawn to be very beneficial for the grass seed. How do you take a soil test? Well, you can take it in different ways, but you can take a trowel and go around your yard. If it's pretty big, get 4 or 5 spots. If it's very small, just maybe do 2. Dig a hole about this big around and about that deep, and put it in a paper bag or in a big Ziploc bag, mix it all together, seal it up, take it down. And why not go ahead and do a soil test on all your sections of your lawn and maybe even your vegetable garden, take it down there. While you're there, pick up a bunch of literature on lawns, orchards, vegetables, all kind of trees and shrubs. They've got a big library of all kind of free stuff. And that's where I got started. Okay. In about, I think it took 2 weeks for my soil test to come back. It told me 2 things. I needed fertilizer and I needed lime. Okay, fertilizer, it was 10, 10, 10, 10, so much per 1,000 square feet. Everybody in here, I'm sure, knows what 10, 10, 10 means, right? The first 10 is nitrogen, the second 10 is phosphorus, and the third 10 is potash or potassium. The nitrogen is for the plant and the leaves. The phosphorus is for the roots. And the potassium is for the fruit and the flowers. If you want green grass, you're going to need a lot of nitrogen. Grass does not have any fruit or flowers, I don't think. If you could let it get big enough, maybe it would. I don't know. Right, Sally? You keep shaking your head. If you want to make sure the roots, if you need the roots to improve, use the phosphorus. And that's the 2 that we'll talk about today. The other thing that it'll tell you is what your pH is and how much lime or sulfur to add to your yard in order to make your pH where it should be. Why is that important? Well, every plant has a target pH, and then there's a range. If you're out the edge of the range, the grass will still grow, but it won't grow as nice as it could. So you'll want to get it as close to the target. Tomatoes and peppers, well, let me back up. It's 0 to 14, and these are logarithms. They're not percentages, they're logarithms. Okay? So it's a little bit complicated. 7 is neutral, it's right in the middle. Now they're saying more, 6.5 is more neutral maybe. But tomatoes and peppers like a neutral pH. Grass is almost the same. It's like the target should be 6.5. So it's 5.5 to 7.5 is the range, and you want to try to hit 6.5. Okay, what is pH? Do you know what pH even is? That was my whole life. And in most of my life, I didn't know what the heck it was. Well, let me read you the definition of pH. It is defined as the negative logarithm of the activity of hydrogens in a solution. It is really a measure of the relative amount of free hydrogen and hydroxyl ions in the water. What all that means, it's how much hydrogen you have in your soil. Hydrogen is the most important part, I guess, for pH. And why is that important? Well, if you don't have it where it should be, your plant can't get the nutrients out of the soil. The farther away from the target, the less nutrients it can absorb. Okay, so I beat that to death, I guess. Get the literature from the Extension Office, complete the soil test instructions, and I would do that if you're revitalizing, but if you're going to renovate, I would wait until we've done the destruction down to the soil before we get started. How do you complete the instructions? Well, you're going to need some equipment. This is a spreader. If you've got a little tiny yard, take your hand and spread it around. You want to put some gloves on if you're doing the lime, I guess. That's a terrible way to do it, but it's cheap, and you're going to get a whole lot over here, and you're not going to get much over here. So I would invest in a spreader. Many of you already have a spreader. If it's a little lawn, you can get one that goes over your neck and it's right in front of you. You crank it and you walk along and spread it all over. That's okay, and it's inexpensive. It's still not as good as a push spreader. You're going to get depends on how you walk and where you walk and all that. You can get a spreader, a little cheap spreader, and I used to have one for 20 bucks. Go to your nursery or your co-op. You can go to the box stores, but they're making a fortune. Go to your nursery and your co-op and buy your stuff. Or you can, in the little cheap one, if you've got a small yard, if you've got a very big yard, you need to spend a little bit more money on a spreader. Maybe go up to $50 on the spreader. It might have a little dial that says how much per 1,000 square feet on it. Most of them don't have that. This one costs $300. I got it for $150. A guy bought it, used it one time, and for some reason he didn't like what the deal was, so he sent it back. They took it all apart and sold it to me for $150. No instructions on how to put it back together. And it looks like it's easy. So I Googled it, and guess what? Google had the instructions to assemble this spreader. I doubt if it has for the smaller $20 ones, but since this was pretty good. You're going to use this to spread the lime. You're going to use this to spread the fertilizer. You're going to use this to spread the seeds. So if you're going to be serious, you might want to go ahead and get a little bit more expensive one than the $20 one. Okay, on the renovation, we're going to go to the renovation now, and we're going to do a little work. And then when we get to a certain spot, then we'll pick up the revitalization, and they'll work together, both do the same thing. But first, we're going to do the renovation. What do you need to do to kill all those weeds down to it's totally brown? And you probably drove around and saw yards that are totally brown in the fall. A lot of people are doing this now. It's getting more and more popular. You can hire somebody to do it. And I should have said that right off the bat. Forget all this stuff, hire somebody. But anyhow, you can use the Roundup. Very expensive. You can get the generic for about half to 2/3 the price of the Roundup. Get the concentrate, and you can get this at your nursery or your co-op also. And you mix this with water into a tank. This is 6 tablespoons per gallon. So this is a 2-gallon tank, so 12 tablespoons. And then a couple more tablespoons. I want it to be a little bit stronger than this, because this doesn't kill everything right now. So it made this a little bit stronger, not a whole lot stronger, not dangerous or anything. And by the way, you've heard all about the cancer and all the stuff with Roundup, so you want protection. I don't know if you can see it on there. You get goggles. My neighbors really laughed at me when they came by and saw me all dressed up in this stuff. But you want goggles, you want a mask, and probably most of you have masks these days. And this is the most important part of this. I've had these before, and the nozzles, they'll spray kind of good and maybe not. This is the most important part of it. This is the spray part. This is nice and pretty. This is all nice. Got a nice cord. That doesn't mean anything. This right here is the most important thing. Many of these, the cheaper they are, the worse. That they don't spray good, and they'll stop and they'll start, and this has a really good nozzle, and that's why I bought this one. I looked at this and thought it really good. There's 3 different sprays on here even. Okay, you got your Roundup or generic. You're ready to go. Put on all your equipment. I'd put on a hat, long sleeve shirt, pants, and I thought I brought some muck boots, but I didn't. Get some rubber boots. Some of you have rubber boots that you can wash off when you get done, because you're going to have that all over you when you get done. It took me about 3 sprays. I'll talk about that a little bit more here in just a minute. And when I got done, I threw everything away except for this. I could wash this and make this sterile again. So pick out some old stuff and throw it away. Or you can. I've got lots of stuff in my closet that needs to be thrown away. You may do too. But if you want to wash it, you can wash it. I'm sure your wash machine will take care of it. Maybe. This is what my yard looked like after the 3rd time. And what I did, I bought some marking paint. It's water soluble. They mark your yard for the cable and the water and everything every time you dig. And this you get this at your store also. It's marking paint. And I marked off parallel lines every 3 or 4 feet across my yard because I didn't trust myself to know where I started. When I get over here, I come back over here, I didn't know where I started. Am I going to double dip? So I put those lines down, and it was real easy to keep track of where I was. So I sprayed this line, and then I moved way back here and sprayed this line, and then I moved way up here and sprayed that line, so it wouldn't be concentrated all at one spot for the trees, the shrubs, my flower beds and stuff. So I spread myself around instead of doing all of it in one spot. After about 2 weeks, I'd say 80% of it was dead. I took my sprayer, went out there again, and don't throw away your clothes yet. And I sprayed every place where it's green, I sprayed it again. Waited another week and a half, 2 weeks. There was still a couple places. Some weeds over here, boy, really strong weeds that I was sure to get them last time, but they still look good, so I sprayed them. So it took me 3 tries to get it to look like that. Okay, now both systems come into play. The revitalization and the renovation come in at the same time. The next thing you need to do, if you want to do it like I did it, I took my lawnmower with a bagger on it, and I mowed my grass, the renovation and the revitalization, down a little bit lower than I usually mow it. But I've got a bagger, so I didn't get that all spread all over the yard. You don't have to do that. I thought it was a good idea. And I didn't throw the renovation stuff, I threw it in my trash. I didn't put it in my compost bin. But I usually throw my grass clippings in my compost bin. I don't have a bin, but it's my compost pile. The next thing I did, or I did not do, was dethatch. That's the next thing they say you probably need to do is dethatch. Your yard might need to be dethatched. I didn't think mine did, and it was going to cause a lot more work. You go rent it for $20 or $30 a day. It's not very big, but when it gets done, you've got piles of grass and roots and things all over your yard that needs to come off of there before you sow your seeds. So you really need to rake it or mow it with a bagger. And I didn't want to rake all that up, so I skipped the dethatching, and I'm fine with that. Okay, then we need to aerate, and I recommend this highly. Your yard has probably never been aerated. And what is aerating? These machines that you can rent, cheap one and an expensive one if you want. They have these little tubes on the bottom of them, about every 2 or 3 inches. They're about that long and they're about that big around at the top, and they go down and like a funnel. And they'll take that plug out of your yard that deep. Okay, what's good about that? First of all, you get air down in there and aerates your soil, but the water gets down in there, the fertilizer gets down in there, and your seeds get down in there. It's great. It's really great. They have one here that I almost rented for about, I think it was $25 a day. It pulled behind my lawnmower, my riding lawnmower. I didn't like that. So I went and got another one that was a gasoline powered, big sucker. It was like a tiller. And it was everything I could do to keep that on my track, okay, which was good. I put an irrigation system in this yard right before I did this on purpose. So I took that marking paint and circled all those little things for the irrigation system, everything, the trap door and all that, because you don't want to run over those things with this aerator because it's going to be very expensive. Okay, so mark all those. If you have anything in your yard that you don't want to run over, mark it. Okay, now we're ready to sow grass. And we got this is called tall fescue. So it's tall fescue blend. There's 6 pounds of it right there. Sowing it, it will say right on the bag how much grass to sow per 1,000 square feet. What's recommended? I don't like the recommendations. I think you really need to put a little bit more on than what's recommended. It's up to you. And if you're using your spreader and you're not used to using a spreader, you might want to put a little bit less in there and practice a little bit on your yard, and then keep adding more to it until you finally get to where you're pretty well spreading what you're supposed to. And by the way, I didn't say this, but you ought to measure it out. If it says so many pounds per 1,000 square feet, you need to put that in a bucket so you can tell about how much. You just don't want to keep pouring it in there. Measure it out. They recommend, in order to get it really homogeneous and efficient, that you push your spreader like this way, and do it, and then take it 90 degrees and do the whole yard this way. And that way you'll get it really good. That's the best way to do it. That's the way I did it. And I usually don't like instructions. Now the most important part of this whole deal comes right now. This is the most important part, and it's probably the biggest pain that you'll have. For the next month or two, you gotta keep it moist. At the top of that yard, if it's not moist, you can tell by looking at it if it's moist or not. If it's dry, that's not good. If that seed gets wet and it starts to germinate, or it germinates, and then it dries out, that's not good because it doesn't have any roots. It has little tiny roots. It's going to be dead. So every day, maybe even twice a day, get used to going out there and looking at the top of that soil. Is it's moist? If it's not, if you don't have a sprinkler system, you better get you a good sprinkler. And this doesn't look like much, but boy, this baby is good. These things, they say, have a pump in them, and this will shoot water up 20 feet in the air. And you can adjust it where it can do a little strip or a real wide strip, and you can adjust it to how far it goes over. Most of them do that. So it's really good. This will really water a big area. So get you a good sprinkler. You probably already have one. But if you don't have an irrigation system, you better be using this. On my irrigation system, I have 15 minutes on the timer. I spray it in the morning, and I spray it in the afternoon. I didn't do that every day, and hopefully it'll rain some. If it rains some, that's good. Hopefully not a downpour right after you get done putting the seeds out, because it'll wash the seeds around a little bit. Okay, wait a week and a half, 2 weeks, and the grass will be up. Okay, there'll be places where it didn't come up very good. You might want to do the whole yard again because it wasn't as thick as you thought it was. But I had just some spots that didn't get, for some reason, didn't come up. I took my hand and spread it with my hand. I didn't use the push spreader. Spread it with my hand, watered it, made sure it was watered, and there was some areas in my yard that dried out really quickly. There's some places where it was really wet, and then right on the other side of the yard it's really dry. So I kept a big sprinkling can with a fluoride on it, just in case. So I didn't have to water the part that was soaking wet, and used that up and down the curb especially. It wasn't a big job. I enjoyed it, going out there and working in my yard every day for a while. Okay. You've spread those seeds the second time. You waited 2 weeks, week and a half. They didn't come up as good as you thought. You spread it again. It took me 3 tries, and now my yard really looks good. I think I got a picture of it here. Continue to sow seed. Keep it moist. Keep it moist. Keep it moist. Okay, continue to seed until you're satisfied. If you get it thick as you want it the first time, and you don't need to do it anymore. Okay, now it's time. Well, I'm skipping ahead a little bit. When it gets to be 3 inches high, that's when you mow it the first time. But just mow it down to 2 inches. This is tall fescue. Don't scalp it. From now on, you need to keep your yard a little bit taller than you're used to. Okay, mow it down to 2 inches, and then from then on, you want to mow it whenever you think it needs to be mowed. Okay, and then now it's time for some fertilizer. And if you see, the 10 in the front is nitrogen, 20 is phosphorus, and 8 is potassium. The phosphorus is the largest number, not nitrogen. What you're going to see here, that every time you turn around, you need to put more nitrogen on your soil, on your grass. That 20, the phosphorus, is for the roots. You've got grass that really looks good, but the roots aren't very big. And they're going to have to make it through the winter. So you want to put the phosphorus. This is phosphorus fertilizer for your grass roots. Kill weeds with post-emergence herbicide. Everybody knows what herbicide is. It's weed killer. And it's post-emergence. And there's pre-emergence and there's post-emergence. What post-emergence means, and you know this, it's the weeds are already up and growing and doing well. Well, where did they come from? Where the heck did the weeds come from? Well, when you took that all the way down, there was weed seeds on your yard, and when the grass seed was germinated, so did the weeds. But not that much. Does everybody know that crabgrass is an annual? And a lot of other weeds are annuals? You don't have any crabgrass in your yard. Right now you have 0 crabgrass in your yard. But next spring, it spreads seeds all over. In September, it got seeds all over the place. So you're going to have more crabgrass next year than you had last year, not because you had the crabgrass, but because of all the seeds. That's the pre-emergence, and we'll get into that a little bit later. But this is post-emergence. The weeds are already up and growing and doing well. This is weed stop. There's a bunch of them like this that say it's good for the lawn, won't hurt the lawn, but kills all these weeds, 1,000 different weeds it kills. I didn't trust that. I'm not going to hurt my yard with that. So I went over in a little corner on the corner of my grass where it's growing real good, and I sprayed the heck out of it with this and waited a while. It didn't hurt it. Didn't hurt the grass. And this thing, I'd like to shoot it for you. It's like a gun. It's got a stream that I can shoot about 10 feet. Okay, so walk your yard with this in your hand and just squirt those weeds. There might be a little place over here where there's a bunch of them. But most of the time it'll be one here and one there and one here and one there. Not too bad. Okay, now apply nitrogen. It's time to put your nitrogen on. And we're going to do nitrogen. Every time you turn around, you're going to have nitrogen to do on your yard. You can go to your co-op or your nursery. Your big box stores have it, but don't go there. Go to your nursery or your co-op and tell them. And you'll usually be friends by now with a guy at the co-op or the nursery, and he knows what you want. And tell him, I need some nitrogen, just straight nitrogen. I don't need anything else. No pre-emergence, post-emergence, just nitrogen. Get your bag of nitrogen and go by the bag and spread it per 1,000 square feet. Keep it moist and wait for spring. In the wintertime, a lot of people don't realize you need to water your plants, not just in the hot summer. In winter, if you have like 2 or 3 weeks where it doesn't rain, that's not good. You need to water them. Use your sprinkler again. And all that is for revitalization and renovation. And that's what my yard looked like after 2 months. And I hadn't raked the leaves yet. If you have a lot of leaves on your yard, don't leave them out there all winter long on your yard, especially your brand new yard. Rake those leaves. Grass it doesn't mind a little partial leaves, but it doesn't want to be completely covered. So get out there and rake. It's good exercise. Right, Matt? It's early spring. Now starting right now, this is going to be your routine from now on. Early spring, late spring, early summer, late summer, early fall, late fall. That's what you're going to do from now on to make sure your yard it looks great. And you can't say, oh, I'm going to renovate my yard. I did all that. I'm done. I really don't want to do all that other stuff, Bud. You better, because I tried that, and 2 years after I stopped, the yard looked just as bad as it ever did. I killed it. Neighbors came by and said, hey, your yard looks great, Bud. The first year. Nobody came by the second and third year to say it looked great. So you've got to keep doing this, okay? In early spring, treat with nitrogen and pre-emergence herbicide at 55 degrees soil temperature. Pre-emergence. Everybody thinks pre-emergence herbicide kills the weed seeds. It doesn't. It interrupts the germination. It doesn't kill the seeds. It interrupts the germination, which gives you the same results, but it doesn't kill the seeds itself. And then at 55 degrees, what in the heck's that with that? Anybody know what 55 degrees is for? That's when weed seeds and lawn seeds and all the other seeds germinate at 55 degrees. There's no reason to put this pre-emergence in the middle of winter or in the summer or any other time, because it's got to be on there when those seeds start to germinate at 55 degrees. Does anybody know how to find out what your soil temperature is? Okay, if you've got a meat thermometer, and most of them start out at 100 degrees, so you can't use them. But if you find one that starts out at maybe 5 or 10 degrees, you stick this in 1 inch of soil, and it'll tell you how close you are to 55. Don't wait till it gets 55. Do it before it gets to 55. Okay, those are hard to find, and I just wanted to mention it because you can find them. And there might be, I haven't checked with Robert Montgomery, but I bet he may have a soil thermometer. I'll be able to find one that really is for the soil. The other way to do it, and it's probably the safest, is to get a hold of your extension office and ask them when to do your pre-emergence. The co-op will tell you too. If you go to the big box store, they probably won't know what you're talking about. So go to the co-op and the nursery, and you've got your buddy up there now at the nursery that you've been talking to this whole time, and ask him when's the best time to do that, 55 degrees. Okay, consider sowing more seed. Don't do that. Not until 6 to 8 weeks, and I'd wait 2 months. Because if you sow the seed now, and the spring is the second best time to sow seed, wait at least 2 months after you put the pre-emergence on there, so it'll be washed away and it won't be in there anymore. Or else, of course, you won't. It's obvious it won't come up. Okay, late spring, treat with nitrogen and broadleaf weed control. And these are all bags. One of them's for the spring, two's for the spring, one for the summer, and one for the fall, of exactly what's on this chart here. So you can get the broadleaf weed control and the nitrogen in the same bag. Many times, I think it's like feed and weed, weed and feed, whatever. Some people think that's pre-emergence. Well, look at the bag, because most of them are not pre-emergence, but they're for the broadleaf. Well, what's a broadleaf? That's a weed that has leaves. On it. Grass doesn't have any leaves, and neither does nutsedge, and that's a whole other program we'll talk about sometime in the future. Nutsedge, geez. Okay, but all the ones that have the leaves, it will kill them. Only if you do it right. If you put that broadleaf weed control on your yard on a hot, dry summer day, it ain't gonna do nothing. You gotta put it on when those leaves are wet. Okay, so after a rain, when the leaves are wet, put your broadleaf weed control on that, or turn your sprinkler on, get everything wet, and then do that. Okay, broadleaf weed control, wet leaves. Okay, and these are these bags up here. You can come up and look at them later after the show if you want. And almost every one of them have that first number is big because it's nitrogen, and soil. Your grass wants nitrogen. It doesn't care about anything else now. It's nitrogen. It's got good roots going. Doesn't need any more phosphorus right now. Early summer, treat with nitrogen and micronutrients. And one of these bags has it on here. And what is a micronutrient? Well, it's not a macronutrient. A macronutrient is your nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium or potash. Those are macro. Micro means that it doesn't need a whole lot, just a little bit. Micro, iron, copper, magnesium, all those things help your lawn. If you remember ironite, everybody remember ironite came out and that was the big thing. It didn't have any nitrogen, phosphorus, or potassium. All it had was all these little micronutrients. And you put that on your yard and it greened up. You've never seen it so green. And there was no nitrogen in it. So they can get by without all that, but they'll do a lot better if you get the micronutrients to them. Late summer, treat with nitrogen and insect control. I just use nitrogen. I don't have any trouble with insects in my yard. You may. I haven't heard a whole lot about insects being bad. I don't want to hurt insects unless I have to. So I skip the insects. You can too, or if you have problems with the insects, early fall, treat with nitrogen and broadleaf weed control again. Well, you already talked about that. You know how to do that. Okay, consider sowing more seed in the fall. This is the best time to sow seeds. So if you still don't like how thick your yard is, or if you've got some bare spots, grow some more seed. Spread some seed. Late fall, treat with nitrogen and micronutrients. There's the micronutrients again. We want to thank the viewers on the Zoomers, on the TV show and the YouTube. This has been Master Gardening. Until next time, good gardening.